Well, the three most interesting stories from the Buchanan 1996 presidential campaign, where I was the in-house deputy communications director, there's a number of great stories. But the first one that comes to mind is after we were doing well in New Hampshire and we knew we were going to win, we all got together, the entire staff got together at a TGIF, watching the results on CNN. And I was at the head of the table and keeping tallies on a piece of paper of how Pat was moving and the vote was going. And Pat Buchanan ended up calling me on my mobile phone. And I told him, well, Pat, things looking good. How do you feel? And he was real positive and upbeat. And I said, we have something to tell you, Pat. I'm here with the staff. And I turned around, I put the phone up, mobile phone, and everyone started chanting, "Go, Pat, go, go, Pat, go." And I got on back on the phone, and he was pumped up. And he said, so what are you doing? And at the time, I think we were drinking beers. I said, well, I think we're all drinking 16-ounce beers. And he said, well, I'm going to go get me a bottle of Chardonnay. And it ended up being quoted in Newsweek by Howard Feynman. So that was one of the great moments. And of course, he ended up winning New Hampshire. And we were pumped that night, and everybody was celebrating. Second story is on the manipulation of the national media. And this was specifically CBS News, and it's probably the worst thing I've seen in my almost 25 years of doing media relations. And that was CBS News called us at 3 p.m. stating that they had someone who had attended an event in Georgia, and he was a Ku Klux Klan member, and he was supporting Buchanan. I started going after them and saying that's outrageous. The Ku Klux Klan would not support Pat Buchanan. He's practicing Catholic. They don't like Catholics. I said, and why don't you do the same thing with Bob Dole? There's a supporter out there who has to be part of a pedophile group like the National Man-Boy Love Club, and you say, hey, well, he's supporting Bob Dole. I mean, why don't you do the same thing? It was outrageous. The media was coming after us with daggers. And the producer was Susan Zirinsky, who's now known as Z. And Z ended up getting promoted afterwards. She's now one of the producers of 48 Hours, one of those shows, magazine shows on CBS. But getting back to the main point here, so we start trying to fight this and kill the story, saying it's bull, it's bull, it's bull. Even Terry Jeffrey, who was campaign manager, got on the phone. We ended up saying, sending a statement in, vile, whatever. Well, they ended up going to run the story. They're going to run the story. The story runs, and the Klan member was not at our event. He was actually known as the KKK guy from the Howard Stern show. And a little side note, a lot of the guys at the Buchanan campaign, especially in the mailroom, we love to listen to Howard Stern in the morning and the libertarian streak. So everyone immediately knew who he was. So I called Z and I said, and I frankly called her a liar, and maybe more vulgar than that. I said, the joke's on you. I said, you didn't have a Klan member that attended an event. He wasn't even in Marietta, Georgia. He lives in Kentucky. I go, and he's very famous. He's the KKK guy from the Howard Stern show. And she said, oh. And she hung up the phone. I found out about 2 years later from the political head at CBS News at that time, Dottie Lynch, that she was actually at dinner with Z, and when she got the call from me, and that she was in a panic that night. They tried to cover their butts, but the damage had been done. The daggers had come out. They really full swing national media, the Dole campaign, just bringing out real ugly people and saying they were supporting Buchanan, but they were playing dirty politics, and that was pretty much the beginning of the end of the Buchanan campaign, because they intentionally had framed it that these people were supporters of Buchanan. And if you knew Buchanan and knew he's a devout Catholic, you would know that these types of people don't care for that. And third and final story, just about what made the Buchanan campaign so fascinating, was we were like the speedboat. We could do things immediately, respond immediately, and I think the third and final story that made it so great was the media really loved Buchanan for accessibility. I'll give you an example. Phil Graham, who was running for president at the time, he had 13 different media relations people working for his staff. We had two, the communications director, who was on the road show, and then myself, the deputy communications director, who was in-house. Basically, I operated the phones. In those days, it was fax machines. And I always remember in Louisiana, we had appeared on 2 TV stations, and the third TV station called and said, "Boy, we just saw him live. Can he come and visit us, in the next day or two?" I said, "Hold on," and I got on another line, and I called the communication. "Hey, are you in the car?" And he said, "Yeah, we're getting on the car. Where are you?" I said, "Can you stop at this TV station?" And they asked the driver. He goes, "Yeah, it's just down the road." And I got back on the other line, and I told the other station, I said, "You know what? You're going to get an interview in about 5 minutes. Get your crew and get out front." And they went out in front. Also, another great story at CNN, Pat Reap, who's no longer there, was doing an event down at the border on immigration, but the Border Patrol would not let him go down there, and we were able to get them in. Also, another story, we were out in Ohio at a tile factory company, and same thing, CNN didn't have a live truck to do a satellite shoot, and they said, we're not going to be able to do that interview at 4 o'clock on Inside Politics. And I said, we can change that. We're doing a 3 o'clock interview with NBC. So I called NBC saying, who did you use for your satellite truck? And they said, oh, it's this affiliate over here in Pittsburgh. And so I said, okay. I called the affiliate and said, hey, can you be available to stay an extra hour? There's a network that will pay you. Oh, yeah, we'll be there. So I called CNN and said, here you go. And he goes, I can't believe you got me a satellite truck. I said, interview's going on. So we were very proactive in that. And that's why the Buchanan campaign was so successful in getting our message out, even though we were a shoestring budget. There's 2 of us on the at one point, or majority of the time, on the media relations side of things. And the day after New Hampshire, I think there were over 1,000 messages for yours truly, and we had to drop in like 20 phone lines, and they set up a special phone just so they could get in touch with KB Forbes, the candidate, the communications director, and the top level reporters that is national media could contact me. The infamous Pat phone. I've saved it as part of my political memorabilia. Yes, it was touch tone, wired line, brought to you by Bell South, and this was the phone that people would call me on at the campaign headquarters.